Almost 500,000 kids run away each year. Most of them within the first 48 hours will be lured towards prostitution in some form or fashion.
The average age of entry into commercial sexual exploitation is 12 to 13 in the U.S.
It's hard to break them out of that when they do get under control of a pimp.
It's not like Pretty Woman. The only part that's going to be pretty is when you're laying in your casket. And eventually, if you don't go down by AIDS, you're going to go down by man's hand.
It is possible to live a life beyond your wildest dreams, filled with hope, faith, and courage. It's possible because I'm a living example.
The city of Las Vegas is known as the entertainment capital of the world, the city of neon lights. But there is a dark side to this city of lights. Hello everyone, I'm Nancy Byrne with KCLV-TV. According to the Department of Justice, there are 100,000 children in the United States currently enslaved in commercial sexual exploitation. Now we're talking about children as young as 11 years old. And while this is a worldwide problem, unfortunately, Las Vegas has been designated as a hub for this criminal activity. However, the city of Las Vegas, our Department of Detention and Enforcement, Metro Police, and some great programs out there in our city are joining forces to fight this despicable crime. We, in the next half hour, are going to expose you to the cold, hard facts of prostitution, particularly teen prostitution. We are going to tell you about some of the programs out there to battle this crime, and we're going to talk to a human trafficking expert on some signs you can look for if you're a parent, teacher, or simply a friend of a teen. Signs that may indicate they're being lured or groomed for a life of prostitution. Now, we must warn you, some of the material is graphic, but we're hoping the information that we deliver in the next 30 minutes empowers us all to send the message out there. The city of Las Vegas will not tolerate pimps, johns, or price tags anywhere near our kids. The sun has barely set on this Tuesday night, and already Sergeant Donald Hoyer says the streets are beginning to fill up with prostitutes.
Probably 2 girls right there.
As a 20-year veteran with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, 11 of those years in the Vice Unit, he sees what most of us don't, and has seen things most of us don't want to see. A lifestyle that all too often begins at a very young age.
Seen them as young as 11. I think our average age that we're seeing is somewhere in between 18 and 21. The average age nationwide for an introduction into the lifestyle is 13.
Some of the girls are lured from home by a pimp portraying himself as a boyfriend, but most often these are homeless teens and children.
Almost 500,000 kids run away each year. Most of them within the first 48 hours will be lured towards prostitution in some form or fashion with their first 48 hours of being out in the street.
It's a lifestyle that usually begins early and always ages them quickly.
We have kind of a saying in Vice that for every year that they're involved in prostitution is equal to a dog year, or you know how that relationship between dog years and human years are. So it adds about 7 years to their life.
The rapid aging process comes from exhausting nights filled with sex with strangers instead of sleep, and that usually leads to some form of substance abuse. We spoke with Ronise Washington. She began walking the streets of Las Vegas as a teen and was arrested 52 times for prostitution before getting out of the life. She says drugs and solicitation almost always go hand in hand.
And the feelings I felt doing those things, they were demoralizing, the things I had to do. Men pulling guns on you and knives on you and making you strip and not paying you, you know, and those things that I did, but because of the drugs, I had to do them because I needed the next hit. And that was the only way that I can prostitute, was to be intoxicated.
We will hear more from Ronise later in the show about the city program she says saved her life. Meanwhile, Sergeant Hoyer says aside from exhaustion, drug abuse, and humiliation from Johns, the other aging factor is fear. Fear of their pimp. If a girl shows up at the end of the night with little or no money, or even hints she's thinking of leaving that pimp, the ramifications are brutal.
It ranges from anything from being kidnapped, beaten, tortured with irons, anything you can pretty much imagine, to being just outright shot. We've seen them where, we've heard stories where they'll make them get in a tub of ice and sit in a tub of ice for a period of time and get them out of the ice. That would be a punishment.
You may wonder why these girls stay with their pimps and endure the torture and abuse. Well, ironically, it's the abuse that keeps them out there.
Fear is a big factor. If you see somebody get killed or somebody burnt with an iron, or you get burnt with an iron by yourself, you realize that the guy means business, and so they're deathly afraid of leaving.
And when they're not living in fear of their pimp, quite often there is a twisted love and devotion for that pimp. Sergeant Hoyer says it's similar to the emotions of a battered spouse, or what they call trauma bonding.
They develop feelings for the pimp, and the pimp uses those feelings and manipulates them into doing this stuff. They believe they're entering into a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, whereas the pimp is solely interested in the financial aspects of it, and once the girl's no longer able to make him money, he's going to cast her aside.
Ronnie Washington says most prostitutes are just as addicted to their pimps as they are to the drugs, two needs they use to fill a very empty self-image.
My self-esteem was so low that I did not care if he had other women or how he treated me, as long as for 1 second he told me how beautiful I was, or that I'm a good hustler, or I'm a good hooker. I will go back out and go and get some more money, just for that 1 minute of validation from him.
But why Las Vegas? Why are so many young girls falling into this lifestyle here, to the point where the Department of Justice has designated Las Vegas a hub for sexual exploitation? Well, Sergeant Hoyer says it's the 24/7 lifestyle, more time for the girls to earn money, and our tourism industry, giving them more people to sell their bodies to.
But when we get big conventions like Magic, we have a big prize fight. When NBA All-Star Week was here, that was a huge period of time where we saw a big influx of prostitutes.
Sergeant Hoyer says the prostitution hasn't changed much in his 20 years on the force, but after all he's seen patrolling these streets, his opinion of these young women certainly has changed.
What a lot of these folks say, it's a victimless crime. Girls are out doing it because they want to do it. I didn't really realize how big of a role the pimp plays in the whole thing, and then how many children are involved in it, and the violence that's perpetrated by the pimps, how common that is. All that stuff was, I didn't think about it at all. You think that the girls keep the money, it just doesn't happen. They don't keep any of it. It all goes to their pimp.
Oh no, this is not a victimless crime. These young women and men have their youth and their innocence stolen, often their lives stolen. And in fact, according to one prostitution research website, women and men who are or were involved in a life of prostitution have a 40 times higher mortality rate than the national average. They die at the hands of their pimps, their johns, drug overdoses, and often suicide. But it doesn't have to end that way. As we said, there are many programs right here in the city of Las Vegas aimed at helping these folks. In fact, right now we want to tell you about one in the city of Las Vegas. It's the City of Las Vegas Municipal Court Specialty Court System. There's one specialty court that specifically targets women with repeat arrests for prostitution, takes them off the nightmare of the streets, and helps them live a life of their dreams. For the first 8 months of 2011, nearly 300 women were booked in the Las Vegas Detention Center, charged with solicitation of prostitution. And for the majority of these women, this was not their first time behind bars. Like this young woman, we'll call her Amy. She says this is her 12th arrest for prostitution.
In the beginning, it was to support my drug habit. And then I had my son, Micah, and I got clean. During that clean time, I did it just to support him. Because it was easier money than getting a job.
But getting a real job and living a good life is exactly what many of these women really want. And for those willing to do the hard work to reach that goal, there is this.
One of the things that I like to start off with is having you take a look at your booking photos, because that gives us a real dramatic visual as far as where you've come from and where you are today.
This is one of several specialty courts within the Las Vegas Municipal Court system. It's called the Women in Need Court, or WIN Court. It's run by Chief Judge Cynthia Lee Young and is an intense program that offers everything from substance abuse counseling to GED classes. It's for women who are determined to get off the streets once and for all. Ronise Washington is a graduate of the WIN Court. She says she started turning tricks as a homeless teen and had been arrested 52 times for prostitution when she finally realized if she didn't get off the streets, she was going to die on the streets.
I can remember getting in a car and a man just pulled out from the back seat a 12-gauge gun and put it to my head and made me strip, and it was only by the grace of God that I was able to get out of that car, and he chased me down the street and no one would help me.
We sat down with Ronise and Maria Rogers. Maria graduated from another Las Vegas specialty court called the Hope Court. It's run by Judge Cedric Kearns and works with repeat offenders, often with substance abuse problems. These ladies are willing to speak frankly in the hopes of deterring others from falling into that life. Maria spent most of her life walking the streets of New York City and agrees with Ronise. There are no fairy tales out there like portrayed in the movie Pretty Woman. This is a game of Russian roulette.
It's not like Pretty Woman. The only part that's going to be pretty is when you're laying in your casket. I got to keep it 100. Because being a prostitute leads from one thing to the next. And eventually, if you don't go down by AIDS, you're going to go down by man's hand.
They say you live in constant fear of the Johns, of the pimps, even of the other prostitutes.
You're going to get snatched, and you're going to get beat, and you're going to be forced to work for somebody. If you're new on the block, you're going to work for somebody. Or the girls out there will jump you, and every time you get out of the car, you get beat up.
That fear and the humiliation prompt most prostitutes to turn to drugs to mask the pain. Then the vicious cycle begins. The need for drugs to escape the life and the need to prostitute to afford the drugs.
Those things that I did, but because of the drugs, I had to do them because I needed the next hit. And that was the only way that I can prostitute, was to be intoxicated.
I've been stabbed. I've been dragged out of cars. And I have stolen from pimps just so that I can go get my next one.
Welcome to Mobile Mental Health. Good morning. I got a flyer about the mentorship program and I was coming to get some more information.
But now those days are over for these two ladies, and since they were given a hand by Muni Court's specialty courts, they want to pay it forward and help others. Ronise is a mentor at Mobile Mental Health Support Services, and Maria is her first mentee.
Okay, let me see your experience with going online and accessing the company database.
Women like Ronise and Maria can come here for a variety of services like basic life skills, therapy, and licensed alcohol and drug counseling. Like the city's specialty courts, they work one-on-one with their clients to help them achieve a better life.
We sit down and we actually set the goal with them. If they don't have one, we set it for them. This is something that's open, and we don't just refer them to places. We actually call these places to make sure that this is available. We walk them through these places. If you want to go to college, we're going to go there with you through admissions, through financial aid.
Maria says thanks to this program and the Hope Court, she is now on her way to her dream job.
But I'm in college, and I'm going for early childhood because I want to open up a daycare for day and night. And then I want to start my own nonprofit organization for women that leave recovery homes.
As for Ronise, she says this is a dream job for her.
It is possible to live a life beyond your wildest dreams, filled with hope, faith, and courage. It's possible because I'm a living example.
And thanks to her recovery, on this particular day, she will fulfill another dream, one that will complete her long, hard journey back to a clean and fulfilling life.
My son's coming today, my 16-year-old and my 4-year-old, and I'm very afraid to be with my son after 10 years, but he will be here today. And I'm excited, as well as afraid, but
He's got to be proud of you.
he is, and today I can be a role model for him.
Two amazing women, and by the way, we have an amazing staff and great judges over in our Muni court system. By the way, the young lady we spoke to at the beginning of that story, Amy, she says she's ready to try win court so that she can be a good mom to her son, and we wish her nothing but the best. So we've seen that these women can get out of that life, but obviously it's best if they never get involved in it in the first place. So we caught up with Stacy Kramer. She is the human trafficking expert at the Salvation Army here in Las Vegas. She says these pimps have an uncanny ability to target the vulnerable and manipulate them into a life of prostitution. Now, moms, dads, pay close attention because some of the warning signs are so subtle they can get past the best and most caring parents in the world. Something as routine and harmless as hanging out with friends after school or on weekends can put kids on the radar of very dangerous criminals, traffickers, or pimps looking to add to their so-called stable. Stacy Kramer is the program director of the Network of Emergency Trafficking Services program with the Salvation Army here in Las Vegas. And she says whether kids are in a group or alone out in public, the old saying, "Don't talk to strangers," should always be their golden rule.
Well, unfortunately, the traffickers or the pimps have really learned how to target vulnerable children. So they're looking for any child who at any given time could be fighting with their parent. They're really good at hanging out at the malls, at schools, the library, outside of group homes, and looking for that vulnerable child. They're not looking for the child who is very confident in themselves. They're looking for that child who just has that little lack of confidence that they could approach, and the child would feel really empowered by having an older man approach them.
While a less confident child is an easier target, no one is completely safe because as despicable as these pimps can be, they have mastered the art of lying, manipulation, and yes, even charm.
They approach them as a boyfriend, and they'll spend a month to 2 months grooming them, getting to know them, really convincing them that they really love them. During that time, they pull them slowly away from their families, convince them that they're the ones who really love them, that their family isn't the one who's really going to take care of them. And then that's after about 2 months is when they turn them out onto the streets.
So Stacy's advice to parents begins with initiating the uncomfortable but extremely important conversation about relationships and finding out exactly who they're hanging out with.
So prior to them becoming teenagers, talking to them, of course, the usual thing about not talking to strangers, but going further into, it's not just don't talk to strangers, you have to really know who it is that you're talking to, understanding that the parents really need to meet anyone that the child is going to interact with.
Stacy says most pimps are computer savvy, so monitor your child's computer use as well.
And making sure that, if the child is being is on the internet at all, that the child does not have access to the internet when the parents aren't around, because the pimps could contact them through the internet. They're very good at grooming them through that channel as well, unfortunately.
As far as when to have these conversations and when to start monitoring your child's computer use, Stacy says earlier than you might think.
The average age of entry into commercial sexual exploitation is 12 to 13 in the U.S., and they're starting to go for younger children, unfortunately.
Teenagers tend to stick with a certain group of friends. In fact, girls in particular tend to have one or two very close girlfriends they do everything with and share everything with. So when it comes to looking for signs that someone may be trying to lure your child into prostitution, or as the pimps call it, grooming a girl for the streets. One glaring sign is that they no longer hang out with their usual friends. But Stacy says there are other more subtle warning signs as well.
If the child does come home with things that are inappropriate in terms of really expensive clothing, really expensive handbags, if their new boyfriend has taken them to get their nails done or their hair done, that's very unusual. If we start to see a decrease in the child's weight, where we know that the child is going out on a regular basis with one particular person and they say that they're going out to eat or out to the movies, but then you see a decrease in their weight, oftentimes it means that the trafficker is starting to regulate what they're eating.
It's hard for any parent, teacher, or friend of a teen to imagine them being lured by these predators, but it's happening. According to the Department of Justice, there are about 100,000 children right now in the United States enslaved in commercial sexual activities. And Stacy says the only way that will change is through enforcement of the laws and education of the public.
What's driving the business is the demand for it, and until we start actually addressing the demand side of it as well, arresting more Johns, and trying to educate men on the torture that women and children have been through, it's never going to stop.
And there are so many people and organizations out there aiming to eliminate that demand. In fact, Stacy tells us that one of the biggest advocates for these teen prostitutes and getting them off the streets is family court judge William Voy. Aside from all of the work he does with the girls, he's spearheading an effort to get a lockdown center built that will offer 6 to 8 weeks of rehabilitation and counseling and offers a much better alternative than juvenile detention. And we'd also like to say that Las Vegas City Councilman Steve Wolfson has started a very successful program. At the end of each City Council meeting, he features a missing teen. He works directly with Nevada child seekers, and we can tell you that more than half of the teens he's featured have been safely reunited with their families. Well, education, that's what this program was all about. We hope we not only told you about the problem, but offered some solutions. We can't feature all the programs out there, but we have compiled a list that you can get to by clicking onto the website you see on your screen. As a city, as neighbors, we can all work together to save these kids and prevent their lives from being stolen, scarred, or worse yet, lost. Thank you so much for joining us.